March 17, 1943. At Tirpitz First 7678 in Berlin, the silence of Admiral Wilhelm Canaris' office was shattered as a thick folder slammed onto his polished mahogany desk. The impact sent a splash of coffee from his porcelain cup across sensitive intelligence papers, documents that, if the Gestapo ever laid hands on them, could mean his execution. "Impossible," he muttered. "The Americans are feeding us propaganda through compromised channels." Through the tall windows of the Abwehr headquarters, Canaris could see the Landwehr Canal where Rosa Luxemburg's lifeless body had been thrown 24 years earlier. Now, as head of German military intelligence, he sat trembling, staring at reports that threatened to unravel not only Nazi propaganda, but the very mathematics upon which German hopes of victory rested. The claim was simple, but devastating. According to intercepted communications and field reports from agents in Mexico City, Ford's Willow Run factory was producing one B-24 Liberator every hour. It seemed absurd. The B-24 was a monster of a machine, an aircraft of 18 tons, built from 1.5 million individual parts, fastened by nearly 500,000 rivets, and composed of 30,000 separate components. That such a machine could be assembled on a moving line like a refrigerator was beyond reason. Germany, after years of effort, still struggled to mass-produce even the simple Kübelwagen utility vehicle. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz, standing stiffly before Canaris' desk, assured him the figures had been triple-checked. The numbers were consistent across multiple channels. Neither man realized that this moment marked the beginning of one of the greatest intelligence breakdowns in modern history, the systematic refusal of the Nazi leadership to believe, let alone act on, accurate intelligence about America's industrial might. The cracks had appeared 2 years earlier. In 1941, Luftwaffe General Karl Kohler had carried to Göring reports from Germany's military attaché in Washington, General Friedrich von Bottcher. According to these dispatches, U.S. aircraft production was already approaching 2,000 planes per month. Göring laughed out loud. The Americans, they can build refrigerators, perhaps razor blades, but aircraft, never. Their claims are bluff. He told Hitler at the Wolfschanze in December 1941, just days after Pearl Harbor, "Their democracy makes them weak. Their mongrel population makes them inefficient. Their Jews make them corrupt. They cannot possibly achieve what they boast." But by March 1943, streams of intelligence arriving from across the Americas painted a different picture. Mexican businessmen friendly to Germany, Spanish envoys in Washington, Swedish engineers passing through Detroit, even letters written by American workers to relatives in neutral countries all spoke of the same astounding reality. Ford's Willow Run plant was producing more heavy bombers than the entire German aircraft industry combined. Within the Abwehr, Oberstleutnant Nicholas Ritter, head of air intelligence, had spent 3 painstaking weeks dissecting the figures. A former Luftwaffe pilot who had once lived in America for a decade, Ritter understood U.S. industry better than most of his peers. In the 1920s, his Manhattan apartment overlooked the construction of the Chrysler Building, where he had seen Americans raise the world's tallest skyscraper in less than 2 years. Now in Berlin, he faced the inescapable reality. His conclusion to Canaris was blunt. If these figures are true, and I believe they are, then Germany has already lost the war. From here, it is simply mathematics and time.
German intelligence funneled much of its most valuable information from Mexico, where Abwehr networks operated under the watch of Agent Georg Nikolaus. He cultivated ties with American businessmen who routinely traveled between Detroit and Mexico's oil industry. Over dinners and drinks, these men spoke casually of industrial miracles they had seen, unaware that their every word was being quietly transcribed by German spies. On February 3, 1943, at a reception hosted by the German-Mexican Commerce Association in Mexico City, an American oil executive named Harold Morrison proved especially indiscreet. After several tequilas, he began describing his recent tour of the Willow Run plant, a tour Ford Motor Company had arranged to impress potential investors. "Gentlemen," Morrison announced, unaware that Wolfgang Blau, a German operative posing as an Argentine leather merchant, was hanging on every word, "what I witnessed defies description." He went on to sketch details with his pencil on a napkin. The assembly line stretched more than a mile, he explained. The factory was so enormous that clouds sometimes formed under its roof, producing rain inside the building. Some 42,000 workers, men, women, and African Americans, were constructing the most complicated machine on Earth. Morrison described the bomber in meticulous terms. 2 bomb bays, each capable of holding 4,000 pounds of explosives, 4 engines, each delivering 1,200 horsepower. The planes weren't built whole, but in modular sections, fuselages, wings, tails, all converging on the line like rivers flowing to the sea. Blau, trying to mask his eagerness, asked whether such complexity must surely create constant delays. Morrison laughed. That's exactly what Consolidated Aircraft said. They mocked Ford, claiming you can't build planes the way you build cars. But Ford broke the bomber down into 60,000 distinct operations. Each worker repeats a single task until it becomes second nature. A housewife who yesterday fried eggs for her children is today fitting hydraulic lines into the tail section. They train them in days, not months. This was the kind of testimony that should have forced a complete reassessment inside Nazi leadership. Instead, it joined a growing stack of impossible reports that most in Berlin refused to take seriously. Some of the most precise intelligence didn't come from spies at all, but from Spain. Officially neutral, yet walking a careful line, Spain often served as a discreet back channel for information. Colonel José Ungría, the Spanish military attaché in Washington, maintained warm ties with American manufacturers while quietly supplying data to Berlin in exchange for tungsten shipments vital to Spanish industry. In March 1943, Ungría attended a reception at the Argentine embassy. There he met Charles Sorensen, Ford's production chief and the mastermind behind Willow Run. Believing he was speaking with a representative of a neutral country that might someday buy American aircraft, Sorensen spoke freely and with pride about what had been accomplished. He recalled visiting Consolidated's San Diego facility in 1940. At that time, B-24s were being built outdoors, each one different from the last, requiring 180,000 man-hours per plane. I knew we could do better, Sorensen explained. That night in his hotel, he sketched out an entirely new approach. Bombers built the way cars were, on a moving line where the aircraft advanced past stationary workers performing specialized tasks. Pressed for details, Sorensen obliged. Ford had built an apprentice school training 8,000 new workers every week. Women now made up 40% of the workforce and, as Sorensen boasted, they're actually better at precision tasks, smaller hands for cramped spaces, and more patience for repetition. African American workers, too, operated advanced machinery, and even teenage boys of 16 were managing logistics. Democracy, Sorensen told Ungría, means using every hand available. It was an astonishing confession, one that, if fully believed in Berlin, would have shattered the Nazi worldview. For here was proved that women, minorities, and ordinary citizens, dismissed as inferior by Nazi ideology, were building the machines that would decide the war.
If Morrison's napkin sketches and Sorensen's proud admissions weren't enough, corroborating evidence soon poured in from multiple countries. The consistency was staggering. In March 1943, Swedish engineer Erik Lundberg toured Willow Run. His report described efficiency beyond European comprehension. He counted more than 1,600 specialized machine tools, many built for a single purpose, and estimated the capital investment at around $200 million, an astronomical sum by European standards. That same month, Japanese naval officer Commander Toshikazu Ome sent a coded dispatch to Tokyo after his own contacts confirmed the production pace. The Germans intercepted his message. Quote, "This one factory," Ome wrote, "produces more aircraft each month than the entire Japanese aviation industry." Other confirmations came via Argentine, Turkish, and Swedish business circles. From each channel came the same impossible figure. Willow Run alone was producing bombers at a rate unmatched by all of Germany's aircraft plants combined. By April 1943, the Abwehr had gathered intelligence from 17 independent sources. When the figures were laid side by side, the conclusion was unavoidable. Willow Run was rolling out as many as 650 B-24 bombers each month, while total American production of the model exceeded 1,400 monthly. The numbers didn't just defy Nazi propaganda, they annihilated it. Yet the higher the pile of reports grew, the stronger the resistance inside Berlin became. Despite the overwhelming reports, Admiral Canaris still sought undeniable, first-hand proof. He authorized Operation Pastorius, an infiltration mission meant to gather intelligence on American aircraft production before any sabotage was attempted. In the early hours of June 13, 1942, two groups of German saboteurs came ashore on the American coast from U-boats. One of the teams, led by George John Dash, landed at Amagansett, Long Island. Dash wasn't just another operative, he'd lived in the United States for 20 years before returning to Germany in 1939. That familiarity made him valuable to Canaris, who ordered him to confirm whether America's production claims were real. But the mission unraveled almost immediately. Haunted by what he already knew about U.S. industry and fearing the suicide mission ahead, Dash surrendered himself to the FBI within days. During interrogation, Dash revealed something that stunned his American captors. Canaris himself told me, he said, that Berlin doesn't believe your production numbers. They think Willow Run is propaganda. He wanted photographs, worker counts, shipping manifests, anything to force Göring to accept reality. FBI Special Agent Charles Landman could hardly believe what he was hearing. "They don't believe we're building a bomber every hour?" he asked. Dash laughed bitterly. "I lived here. I saw your automobile factories before the war. I tried to explain. If Ford could turn out a car every minute in peacetime, of course they could build a bomber every hour in wartime. But in Berlin, they called me a defeatist." That disbelief, the refusal to accept what their own spies confirmed, was already sealing the fate of the Third Reich. On April 20th, 1943, Hitler's 54th birthday, Admiral Canaris personally carried the evidence to Hermann Göring at Karen Hall, the Reichsmarshal's opulent hunting estate. He came armed with everything: photographs, intercepted documents, and reports from dozens of sources. Laying them across Göring's massive oak table, he spoke carefully. "Herr Reichsmarschall, we have confirmation from 17 separate sources. Ford's Willow Run plant is producing a B-24 Liberator every hour. They have maintained this pace since January." Göring, swollen to over 280 pounds and irritated by what he saw as defeatism, picked up one of the photographs showing the endless assembly line. With a sneer, he dismissed it. "Canaris, do you take me for a fool? These are wooden mock-ups, stage props for propaganda. Do you expect me to believe Americans can turn out bombers like sausages?" Canaris pressed on, producing an intercepted manifest from the Pennsylvania Railroad: 16 million pounds of aluminum shipped monthly to Willow Run alone. "Herr Reichsmarschall, this single plant consumes more aluminum than our entire Reich produces in a month." Göring laughed coldly. "And where did they get this aluminum? From their women riveters? From their Negro workers? Canaris, you've been duped by American lies." A week later, Canaris was summoned to the Wolfschanz to brief Hitler directly. Present were Generals Jodl and Keitel, along with Propaganda Minister Goebbels. Hitler listened impatiently as Canaris outlined the same evidence, warning that combined American and British production would soon overwhelm German defenses. Hitler cut him off. "Admiral, the Americans are capable of producing automobiles and refrigerators, yes, but not bombers, not precision machines. They claim they achieved in 16 months what took us 6 years of preparation. It is impossible." In truth, Canaris already had the ultimate proof: film footage of Willow Run in operation, smuggled through Switzerland. For 5 minutes, the camera panned along the mile-long line, showing B-24s in every stage of assembly, men and women of every background working with astonishing efficiency. A clock in the frame confirmed the rhythm of production. Hans Oster, Canaris' deputy, watched the reel with him in silence. Finally, he whispered, "Mein Gott, it's true." Canaris took out his lighter and set the film aflame. "We cannot show this. They would call it fake. Or worse, they would call us traitors." The truth existed. The leadership simply refused to believe it. By November 1943, German intelligence had obtained aerial photographs of Willow Run, taken discreetly by a Spanish diplomat. Analysts in Berlin pored over the images for weeks, measuring details with meticulous care. The conclusions were damning. Parking lots with nearly 12,000 cars, proof of 3 full shifts. At the airfield, 47 completed B-24s waiting for delivery. The assembly line itself visible through skylights, with aircraft positioned exactly as previous reports had claimed. Rail sidings crowded with freight cars unloading materials. The chief photo analyst, Hermann Bernard, wrote bluntly,
Photographic evidence confirms human intelligence. Production rate appears accurate. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment. But when the images reached Göring, he dismissed them without hesitation. These are clever American tricks. Models, manipulated photographs, nothing more. Not everyone in the Reich was so blind. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister and one of the few Nazi leaders with real industrial expertise, quietly obtained copies of the intelligence. His diary entry for May 15, 1943, revealed his private despair. If Willow Run's figures are even half correct, we face not defeat but annihilation. They produce in a single month what we achieve in an entire year. But to speak this truth openly would be a death sentence. Others saw the same reality. Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, head of SD Inland and trained economist, studied American industrial data late that year. His report to Himmler was chilling. Ford's pre-war production in 1941 exceeded 1 million vehicles. Converted to bombers, this capacity now produces on a scale that ensures by mid-1944 enough B-24s alone to drop the total German bombing tonnage of 1940 on London every single day. Yet these warnings, backed by photographs, economics, and eyewitnesses, never broke through the wall of ideology at the top. The leadership had already decided the numbers were impossible.
On December 24, 1943, Canaris presented his final, most comprehensive assessment of American aircraft production. The figures were staggering, even by Allied standards. By year's end, the U.S. had built more than 85,000 aircraft, half of them heavy bombers. Willow Run alone had surpassed 650 bombers per month. By mid-1944, combined U.S. and British factories would field air fleets capable of dropping more bombs in a week than Germany had dropped on Britain during the entire Blitz. Canaris laid the report before Hitler, flanked by Jodl, Keitel, and Göring. His voice was calm, but urgent. "My Führer, unless we seek terms now, our destruction is certain. Industrially, we are already defeated." Hitler's face turned red with rage. Slamming his fist on the table, he shouted, "Lies! These numbers are an English fabrication. America is a land of mongrels. They cannot achieve such miracles of production. You, Canaris, insult the Reich with your defeatism." Göring, eager to deflect blame from the Luftwaffe's failures, sneered across the table. "Admiral, you would have us believe that the Americans, with their Negroes and their women, can outproduce the German Volk? It is absurd." Canaris did not back down. He had seen the photographs, the manifests, the film reels. "Mein Führer, this war is already lost." The silence that followed was icy. Hitler dismissed the meeting with a single wave of his hand. To him, Canaris's warnings were nothing but betrayal. Within weeks, the Gestapo opened formal investigations into the Abwehr. Canaris's authority was stripped away, and by early 1944, the man who had tried hardest to warn Germany of reality was under constant surveillance. The evidence had been overwhelming. The failure lay not in intelligence, but in belief. By the spring of 1944, the nightmare numbers the Abwehr had reported for 2 years became flesh and fire in the skies above Europe. The U.S. 8th Air Force, armed with thousands of B-24 Liberators and B-17 Flying Fortresses, launched raids of a scale never before seen. On February 20, 1944, the Allies began Operation Argument, better known as Big Week. For 7 consecutive days, more than 3,800 heavy bombers pounded German aircraft factories, refineries, and rail yards. The scale stunned even hardened German civilians. On a single day, nearly 1,000 bombers filled the skies. That meant the United States was dispatching more aircraft in one mission than Germany could replace in an entire month. By mid-1944, Willow Run and its sister factories were sending more bombers into combat each month than Germany had fighters to oppose them. The Luftwaffe, bled white from the Eastern Front and starved of fuel, collapsed under the onslaught.
Albert Speer, watching the Reich cities burn, confided to his staff, "We are fighting an enemy who manufactures weapons as easily as we bake bread. The mathematics are merciless." Meanwhile, Admiral Canaris, stripped of his power and under Gestapo watch, saw his predictions fulfilled with brutal precision. In July 1944, after the failed plot against Hitler, suspicion turned fatally toward him. By early 1944, he was arrested and later executed at Flossenbürg. The man who had tried hardest to warn Germany with facts and numbers died branded a traitor, while those who had clung to denial dragged the Reich into ruin. The "bomber an hour" that Berlin mocked as propaganda had become a daily storm blotting out the sky.
By the end of the war, the full scale of Willow Run's achievement was undeniable. German intelligence had accurately counted every bomber, every worker, every detail, but the Nazi leadership refused to accept the truth. They had the numbers, yet ideology blinded them. The Third Reich did not fall from lack of information, it fell from an unwillingness to believe what was right in front of them. The consequences were immense. Germany misallocated resources, delayed diplomatic decisions, and faced a relentless aerial bombardment that it had underestimated. Millions of lives were lost, not because of intelligence failures, but because truth was ignored. The story of Willow Run demonstrates the power of a free and mobilized society. Workers like Rose Will Monroe, the real-life inspiration for Rosie the Riveter, drove rivets, assembled wings, and worked double shifts, knowing their labor could help turn the tide of war. Ordinary citizens performing ordinary tasks with extraordinary discipline created an industrial miracle that no ideology could dismiss. This failure of Nazi leadership offers timeless lessons. Truth cannot be ignored without consequence. Accurate intelligence can be rejected, but reality does not bend to belief. Mathematical facts, human capability, and collective effort cannot be denied without paying a catastrophic price. Willow Run did more than build bombers. It proved that democracy, diversity, and freedom are forces of strength. German spies counted everything, their leaders believed nothing, and in that refusal to see reality, the Third Reich sealed its fate.